Had to wait for that special, beautiful intro music to hit there, Brandon Ramsey. How the hell are you, first of all? Doing great over there in the Zoom action. I guess we got two different Zoom action headquarters. I'm in base camp 1A. You're in base camp 1B. How's life going over there?
Life is good here in kind of gray, rainy Indiana. We're doing all
Same.
right. Yeah, excited to break down another Kentucky commit. Justin McBride is what we're going to talk about today. But first, how about everybody? Let's give Stephen Peak a little love. Let's hammer that like button. Let's subscribe to the KSR YouTube channel. And how about you just leave a comment while you're at it? Just let us know you're here. Let us know we're listening. Me and Zach love to see the comments. We might have time to get to one or two at the end, ask a question or something if you feel so inclined. But yeah, that's how I'm doing. How are you doing, Zach? And let's talk some Justin McBride.
I'm doing great, Brandon. We're kind of in just that weird, slow but not slow part of the offseason where you're still kind of waiting on the last couple pieces to roll in for the roster. Obviously, Kentucky missed out on Marcio Santos earlier today. He's going to LSU. That was kind of a foregone conclusion. It felt like from the moment Mark Pope left Israel, because that's just how this offseason's been going so far for him. But Kentucky is still kind of in need of a couple more spots. They got 3 to fill there, but we're going to talk about Justin McBride, who third team all Sun Belt, and this is Zoom action, by the way. If you don't know what you're watching, this is Zoom action. Like Brandon said, like, comment, subscribe. Holly's in the comments right now asking you to do everything. And if you do have some questions about, let's try and keep them Justin McBride specific if you have any questions, so we're not kind of getting off track talking about big picture stuff. But if you have any, please drop them in the chat, and we'll try and circle back to them at the end of the episode. But yes, we're talking about Justin McBride today. There you are, Holly. Shout out to her for always being in here with us. But like I said, he's a third team all Sun Belt performer last season at James Madison. Not a great James Madison team, actually a pretty bad James Madison team, kind of on the surface. I think they finished around 500, I think 252nd or something. I actually don't have their KenPom pulled up right now, but their defense was not good. They were actually a pretty horrific defensive team last year, mediocre-ish offensive team. But Justin McBride was their best player by far. Came over, let's see, he started his high school career, or college career at Oklahoma State. He was in the same recruiting class as one Brandon Garrison, and those two joined forces together with the Cowboys, played there together as freshmen for the 2023-24 season. Then McBride jumped ship, similar to Brandon Garrison, but instead of going to Kentucky, he went to Nevada and kind of upgraded it, boosted his stats a little bit, and then made the move to James Madison this past season, where his game really took off. You see some year-over-year improvement with his stats, which is something you like to see with a guy who kind of changed, kind of went down competition levels slowly, and then really once he found his groove, found his rhythm at James Madison, really started to hit his flow. Steve, I don't know if you have one of those fancy graphics on him or not, but I can go, if you do, feel free to throw that up there, and we can talk. There it is. Yes. So the stats, the first thing that jumps off the page with Justin McBride, 6'7", 240 pounds. We're going to talk about it more as we go along, but he's listed as a 4. That's probably, he told KSR Plus's Jacob Polachek that he talked with Pope, and the vision with him is a stretch 4 at UK. But when we show some of the film, you're going to see a guy that can dribble the ball pretty well. For a guy his size, actually very good at between the legs dribbling, just guys in his face, can really take a guy's his size off the dribble pretty well. So he can even be a guy that could maybe shift down, play at the 3 a little bit if he needs to. But that 3-point percentage is the one that's going to jump off the page. This is what's going to have a lot of Kentucky fans excited about him, because he is a stretch big man who, like I said, can kind of dribble on the perimeter a little bit. I think he made a little over 1 a game last season. Yeah, 1.2. He was, what was his actual stats? I have 38 of 95 on threes. That was 40%. Real high usage guy as well at James Madison. Had the ball in his hands a lot. Like I said, he was probably their best player. The playmaking stats, I think he's a better passer than some of the stats might indicate. More turnovers than assists. But again, some of that is just the product of the talent around him. I think his usage rate will go down at Kentucky. Ideally, he is in better situations to pass to his teammates, and those numbers kind of shift around a little bit. But yes, definitely a very talented player. I think we're going to, Brandon, we did the Njaye Zoom action last week, and we kind of came away with it thinking, this guy is probably the starting 4, or like that's probably why you bring him to be in there. But as we discussed off camera before we went live, we might actually kind of be changing on that. And I think you said it already earlier this week on Steven's show, his radio show, that McBride's probably going to be the starting 4 from the opening game. I think that's probably the case at this point. That's probably where the spot he'll start out in, and we'll see if Njae can kind of overtake him as the season goes along, because McBride just has a much higher floor than Njae, so you're going to kind of probably want to roll with him. But we'll see what Pope ends up trying to do. Stephen, you can go ahead and pull that graphic off of there whenever you get a chance. But so Brandon, and one other thing I wanted to mention with McBride, and now yes, McBride was the subject of the Tyron Stokes debacle and all that. Like, I kind of forgot about how all that out. So for those that remember, Justin McBride's commitment was announced by UK 45 minutes before Tyron Stokes picked Kansas. Just kind of, even looking back at it now, just kind of a weird PR decision. Maybe not as big of a deal as we were making it out to be, but just kind of took the moment away from the kid. And I think that's the main thing that was kind of awkward. But I think that's helped Kentucky fans kind of attach to him a little bit more. Like, hey, like, you know, this guy got screwed over with his moments. So let's pump him up a little bit. So Brandon, that was my long-winded intro. Before we dive into the film, we've got 4 total clips to go through. Just what are your initial takeaways, your general overview of Justin McBride and what he's going to bring to Kentucky next season?
Yeah, I think a couple things before we dive into the film here. One being going back to the discussion about McBride versus Njae, and who's going to start, who's going to be more ready. I personally, and I get it. There are definitely people out there that are higher on Usman Njae than I am. I am admittedly probably
I don't know where I'm at with him,
conversation very trepidatiously. Like I hope it works out. I'm going to need to see it in Lexington before I really buy into him being a difference maker for Kentucky. I just have a feeling that Justin McBride is going to be more ready, certainly early in the season. This guy's played 3 years of college basketball in America. He's also, and like I said the same thing to Steven on his show the other day, like I don't want the alarm bells to go off when I say this, but like Njae also has to get here. Like, there's no reason to believe that's going to be an issue necessarily, but like his season's not even over yet. He's not here right now. That process takes a little bit anyway. Like even if everything goes completely, perfectly, smoothly, as planned, as hoped, like Justin McBride presumably could be there today if he wanted to, or is at least working out at James Madison or back wherever he's from, whatever. Like Njae, I mean, it's not like he's not playing basketball. He's literally playing professional basketball currently. So that's far from a bad thing. But like, he's just not going to be around Lexington, I'm guessing, as quickly as Justin McBride is going to be. So like, that's just going
early June-ish is usually when the guys start to come on campus.
Yeah. And I guess, I mean, maybe I'll be wrong. I'll be surprised if Njae is there with everybody else. Like, I don't think I'm completely insane on that, but we'll see. So I just think that McBride is a more proven product. I hope like heck that Njae comes over here and is so good that he beats him out pretty quickly. And it's like, holy cow, we have a real talent here. That would be a very good problem to have for Kentucky. But I just expect, you said it the way that I've said it. Like, Njae is your high ceiling 4-man. Justin McBride is your high floor 4-man. Like, I think you can kind of, you can expect him to be serviceable. And I get it. That's not super exciting, but like, I think he's going to be fine. And then Njae is kind of your big swing of, he might be a stud, he might almost be unplayable, and we'll kind of figure that out as time goes. But as it pertains to McBride specifically, one of the things that I for some reason just kind of hit me as you were talking about it and going over those stats, but one of the things that's I think a clear difference this year compared to the guys that Coach Pope brought in last year are now 3 of these transfer portal additions, in Zoom Diallo, in Alex Wilkins, and Justin McBride. They were all the best player at their previous stop. Like, Kentucky got some flack in the transfer portal, and it ended up being probably rightfully so, of you recruited a bunch of role players last year, guys that you were hoping would make this leap, or that they were something at their previous stop and we're kind of hoping they become something else at Kentucky. Now, there's still a difference between doing these things at Washington and Furman and James Madison compared to Kentucky, but you're not necessarily asking these guys to do anything foreign when they come to Kentucky. Like, these guys have all been the man at their previous stops. So now they either have the chance to show they can be the man still at Kentucky, or they can settle into a more comfortable role and just kind of excel in even a lesser role than they've had in the past. And I think that's not a bad way to enter enter the season where like you have these guys that are used to being the dude, are used to being all conference players, are used to being high usage guys, have put up big numbers in the past, and then you can kind of figure out how to put them into their respective roles as things shake themselves out. But I like having the talent, and I think that Justin McBride has some of the talent. You'll see that as we dive into the film. Kentucky fans have also been clamoring, I think, for a couple of years, especially in Coach Pope's offense, to have some more skill in the front court, to have some guys that can stretch the floor a little bit. And again, Justin McBride comes in as a 40% three-point shooter. I had a tweet earlier today, I believe, or maybe yesterday, talking about his synergy catch and shoot numbers. As a spot-up guy, he was in the 96th percentile of all of college basketball last season in points per possession, shot something like 45.5% on spot-up catch and shoot threes. So again, those are the type of threes that you would assume the shot diet would lean more towards those type of threes and less of some of the forced, like, have to take it because you're the best player sort of threes. And I think that's something that we clearly at this point can say that when Coach Pope and whether it's Keegan Brown or, anybody within the Kentucky basketball offices, when they're studying the analytics, kind of diving into the metrics, I think it's pretty clear that they valued some of those catch and shoot numbers because you have several guys coming in this season that were good, but maybe unproven, not great shooters at previous stops, but have very, very encouraging catch and shoot numbers. We talked about that a lot with Alex Wilkins and Zoom Diallo in the backcourt. It's even true with a 40% shooter in the front court with Justin McBride. So I think that's clearly something that they think, hey, we're going to be able to get these guys catch and shoot threes at Kentucky. And yeah, they were all the man at their previous stops, but they're not going to have to force as much stuff because of the collective of what is Kentucky's offense. And I think that's something to look at as we dive into the film here with Justin McBride, because there is some pretty, like, there's some impressive talent that you'll see on film. And some of these plays, like, I think probably 3 of our 4 clips are when James Madison played Arkansas. And I mean, he's given them buckets in some different ways. So I'm encouraged by what McBride could bring to the table at the 4 spot for Kentucky this coming season.
Yeah, just to kind of bounce off that a little bit, I like to use the CBB Analytics website to get some of my stats and stuff, and they have a player comparison model on there. And I did a player comparison model for his last season at James Madison and then his entire 3-year college career. And the number one comp was, I'm sure you're probably more familiar with him than most, and me in particular, Boise State's Drew Fielder, who was all Mountain West Coast Conference last season, 14.7 points per game, 6'10" kind of forward guy who was really pretty good and impressive in his conference there. So that was kind of the comp there. Stretchable type forwards who can kind of pass. And I think what really stood about Bride when I was watching the film was just the ability to kind of bring the ball up the floor. Like he was effectively the point guard for a lot of their possessions. Like they would give him the ball, bring in the second the ball or the other team would score, he was bringing it up.
Played off some ball screens. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I just, after last season, like I just can't get over the fact that that UK is gonna have guys that can actually dribble and have like competent ball handling skills. Like that was just something that became such an issue down the stretch last season. So I'm very excited about that, especially as a guy who can play like a 3 or a 4 in Justin McBride. But we can go ahead and start diving into some of the film here. I will go ahead and bring up our little film here. So we got 4 different clips. We're going to do Brandon's 2 clips first. Like you said, we got a lot of the Arkansas game here. James Madison kind of got boat raced in this one, but that's not the point. The point was of looking at some of his how just McBride played in particular against an SEC level competition. I think that's the important part here is he's doing all this stuff against a tournament team in Arkansas. And going up against like Trayvon Brazil was pretty much the guy that he was matched on a lot of it. So we'll start right here with our very first play. And this is just going to be sort of like a navigating, processing, good feel, like when you're at the top of the key type, get into the lane and just make a tough bucket. So I'm going to let this one play real quick, Brandon, and then I'll get your thoughts on it. So like I said here, the action all starts at the top of the key here. It's kind of all bunched up. And what I liked here is once everything gets bunched up, he kind of pauses right here for a second, and it feels like he's quickly everything is kind of processing and downloading into his brain pretty quickly here as he sees that all he has to do is just kind of bully through DJ Wagner, hit him with a nice little spin move up and for just a nice, pretty layup right there. So Brandon, what did you like about this play? What kind of stood out for you?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we sort of started to allude to is talking about his ball handling and his ability to be a creator off of the dribble some. There were so many times last season on this show specifically where we would talk about some of Kentucky's struggles simply dribbling the basketball, and that was never more clear than in the last game of the year where, Kentucky essentially it became a situation where they were unable to function against Iowa State and their pressure defense because more or less if Denzel Aberdeen wasn't dribbling the ball, you didn't feel very confident. So now what's Kentucky done in the transfer portal? They went and got two of the best playmaking guards available on the board. Certainly guys that can dribble, pass, and shoot a little bit. Then you go get a skilled four-man who can provide some secondary, tertiary playmaking and ball handling from the front court. So I like that. He's playing off of a little ball screen action here. And as you said, once he gets this switch and realizes that he has a smaller guard on him in DJ Wagner, he knows to not kind of drive into the mess there to the left. He spins back to his right and then closes that space and just sort of plays right through DJ Wagner's chest, knowing that, hey, I'm 6'7", 6'8", 230, 240 pounds, and I can just play right through Wagner's chest and go score it at the basket. Another thing I like about McBride is he comes in with pretty good finishing numbers around the basket. I think per synergy, I know for some reason you and your college basketball analytics subscription and my synergy subscription, they don't always mesh perfectly in terms of the way
percentage point give or take,
But I think I had him at like 61.6% on at the rim finishes.
I had 63.6% is what I've got.
I'll take your number. Let's go 63.6. But you always choose the greater of the two when it helps you out. But exactly. We're talking about a 60% plus interior finisher. And when you think back to a lot of these guys, I mean, even Malachi Moreno, his numbers were pretty ugly at times. Otega Owe, Colin Chandler, a lot of these guys, I mean, we're talking guys that were in the low 50s with those numbers. And obviously, sure, that's SEC. This was Sun Belt, but like this clip is from the SEC on the road at Arkansas, and he finishes it just fine. So I like the ball handling. I like the strength, and I like the way that he finished around the basket. And I think just adding that skill level to Kentucky's offensive repertoire, I think will just help things operate a little bit more smoothly, a little bit more freely, and certainly kind of open up some options, I think, for Coach Pope this season that maybe he just felt like, hey, I didn't have the ability to do some of the things I wanted to do last year because the roster ended up not being as skilled as I needed it to be.
Yeah, and another thing, so kind of just some of the numbers I was looking at, he only had 5 dunks last season, which I thought was kind of odd, but he's definitely like more of a below the rim player anyways. But he led James Madison in layups at 143, like pretty significantly. Like the next guy was like in the 120s or something like that. Like we said, good finishing numbers there. One thing I did find interesting when I was looking on CBB Analytics was he had a and one percentage of 41.1. So 41.1% of the times he got fouled on a shooting foul, it went in. And that was 95th percentile among all forwards.
That seems extremely high.
Yes, so that was a very good number. And that's, that's obviously a different level competition. He's going to be a lot stronger than some of those guys. And I think that's why, in part of the reason we chose the Arkansas game was to show against SEC level competition and prove he can do it there. There's also not many James Madison games available for viewing on YouTube, especially when they went like 16-16 last year or whatever it was. But yeah, so like I still liked those numbers there. The ability to finish, like you said, finishes well, can convert those shots that he's strong enough to make his and ones. So I liked that number a lot. And the general usage number, I mean, 27.9 usage rate, which was 97th percentile last season. So just really good with doing stuff like that, like trying to operate with the ball in his hands and getting his team easy buckets. So let's go ahead and transition here into our next play. Brandon, this one is also yours, and this is going to be the catch and shoot from the three from the top of the key, something you alluded to with your synergy numbers there. So this is a quick one too. This is just easy. And I will say he has an interesting form. Like it feels like his jump shot takes like a second longer than it should. Like he just kind of like hangs and floats at the top of his jump for a second, or the top of his form, and then releases it. But like you said, or like we talked about, shot the ball really well last season, 40% clip, and really good on the catch and shoot on these particular shots right here. So I'll let it play for just a second here so we can kind of go through it, and I'll let you talk, Brandon. But kind of a weird, like kind of waits maybe just a half a beat at the top of his top of his form there. But it allows him to have a high release point at 6'7". Looks like he has a decent enough wingspan and a high release point there that he can get those shots off. So that's against FIU early in the season. But Brandon, just quickly, what did you like about this play here?
I think this is what he's going to be asked to do at Kentucky. There were more impressive clips of him making threes. Like he made a couple
at Arkansas, or one at Arkansas.
Yeah. He made a couple tough ones late in the clock. He would slip to pop and make some on the move a little bit. But I think these are the ones that like we talked about, that he's going to be asked to make at Kentucky. And I like to show those sort of clips. You're right. There's a little bit of almost like a double clutch there at the very top of his release. And his hands kind of get a little separated sometimes on his release. But, he, as you said, he has a good release point. The overall kind of path into his shot is pretty smooth. So I don't have a whole lot of concerns about his form. And also, I mean, the dude's 21 years old and just shot 40% from three. Like it's not changing at this point. So it is kind of is what it is. And I think as long as he keeps that timing and the rhythm down, then he'll make a good percentage again. And I think that's also why his spot up numbers are pretty good. Like when he can control his rhythm, when he can control his pacing into that shot, he's at his best. Made like 45.5% of shots like this in this clip, compared to a little bit lower percentage on things where he had to maybe do it on the move a little bit more, create his own 3-point shot, even something off the dribble or a sidestep, where he just can't control that rhythm as well. But yeah, I think this is what you've been looking for from a 4-man at Kentucky for a couple of years now. You had some hope that Andrew Carr could bring some of that, and there were times where he made some threes, but certainly not at the volume as that maybe you would have wanted. Same thing with Andre Yelovich. You kind of hoped he was going to come in and be that sort of guy, because he sort of looked the part of it on film, and it just never fully clicked. This is the guy that has proven he at least can do it at a decent volume at a good percentage. And if those things translate to Kentucky, then I think you have a chance to have one of your most effective 4 men of Coach Pope's 3-year tenure in Lexington.
Yeah, and Stephen, if you don't mind to go ahead and throw up that shot chart I sent over whenever you get a second. But Brandon, what was his catch and shoot synergy numbers real quick?
I think he was like 20 of 45 from 3, which was 45.5% on those spot up threes. So 20 makes, that's over half of his total, made 3 volume. So that's a pretty good sample size. So I think, the hope would be that you can see, as you and I were talking about earlier, like if you can see that shot diet, as I call it, transition more towards those spot up catch and shoot threes, then you would hope that the percentages can look maybe even more like that catch and shoot number, and less even like I would sign up right now for him to shoot 40%, but if it can creep even higher to 45.5 or somewhere in that range on those spot up threes, and he shoots more spot up threes, then I think that's what you're kind of hoping for coming into a Kentucky offense run by Coach Pope.
Yeah, and as you see the shot chart here that Stephen just popped up, really good. Like the above the break threes is really where he was shining. Like I think the catch and shoots, maybe even transition as well. Like if he can get him above that 3-point extended line, he was really good. I think he even shot in the 45% range on his above the break threes. You see his shot chart is kind of all over the place as we're looking at it here. Like he's got some green dots in the corners, but he didn't shoot many. I think only like 4 or 5% of his threes came from the corner. So he was definitely a guy that was like we've talked about. He was a very high usage guy, primary ball handler. So he wasn't kind of listing down into the corners a lot. He was pretty much always involved in the offense. So we'll see if that changes at Kentucky. I assume it will. Like he'll probably get some more corner 3 looks, but very good on these above the break threes. That one we just showed was from the top of the key there. Some interesting red dots in that mid-range area. Like he took a pretty decent amount of mid-range shots. I have some numbers here somewhere. Or I didn't actually write down the numbers. I just wrote not a good mid-range shooter. So good job there, Zach, on my analysis there. But didn't take a terrible amount of them, but when he did, they just weren't his shot looks. And I think, again, as Brandon was talking about with the shot diet, that stuff should change a little bit when he gets to Kentucky. But pretty much like he is mostly at threes and layups, guys. And that's something that you want here. Something I did notice when I was looking at his numbers is he had 13 games without hitting a 3 at all of his 31 games played. He did have 10 with 2 or more though. So it did kind of feel like it was a, if he's hitting them, he's hitting them. If not, he's not type deal. And if you look back at his time at Oklahoma State, Nevada, different role, obviously. His shooting numbers there weren't great from three, like 28% at Oklahoma State, 24% at Nevada. But I will say, like, I trust in the sample size from last season because he just shot more. He shot more last season than he did in his first 2 seasons combined, and he made more as well. So I trust the 40% number. I'm sure that might come down to earth a little bit, but even if he's shooting 35, 36% at Kentucky on, what should be more open looks, and probably getting himself, he was 3.1 3-point attempts last season. If he gets that number up to 4 or even 5, and he's hitting a 35%, 36% clip, I think that would be really good for him. So yes, the 3-point shooting is definitely a big factor for him, and something that he should be able to provide at Kentucky. Anything else on that you wanted to touch on with the 3-point shooting, or roll into the next one here?
I think we can keep it rolling. I did have to smile there. You were giving yourself a hard time about it, Zach. Captain Crash in the comments says, not a good mid-range shooter. Don't overwhelm us with the details, Zach.
Well, it's funny because I have I just have numbers after numbers after numbers, and then the one thing I don't put the mid-range. I was like, yeah, he's like, I don't even want to talk about the mid-range shooting. Zoom Diallo and Alex Wilkins are going to take enough mid-range shots for him both. So I don't think that is going to be too much to talk about. So that's probably why I didn't add it in there. But okay, so let's go. Remove that, and then at this, boom, okay, and we will go into our third pick here. So these are the plays I picked. We'll let this play through. So this is like a pick and pop assist, the play that I'm about to show here, and this is, again, more of the stuff that we've talked about, just actually getting to see it in practice here. Ball handler, high usage for a guy his size. He's impressive when he gets himself into pick and roll situations. Here you're going to see a pick and pop where he gets doubled on the ball screen here. And I like that he does it with a guard as well, like a pick and pop with a guard. Like you can kind of maybe see that, maybe working with him and Alex Wilkins, Zoom Diallo, maybe you'll probably be able to expand on that a little bit better than I will in terms of how that might be able to work. But just a nice feel here, like passes around the defenders. He gets his guy wide open for a 3, boom, bangs it right in. So just like this one, because this is something that I can see happen at Kentucky. I don't know how often he's going to be running a bunch of pick and rolls with the guards that Kentucky's going to have, but I could see a situation where he's in here where, one of Zoom and Wilkins is out, and you want him to get himself going a little bit, get himself into a playmaking situation. And you can rely on him here for that. So I like this play for that reasons, because it just shows a little bit of the variation and the different skill set that he can provide offensively. And we will talk about his defense a little bit. There's not too much to talk about with his defense, I'm being quite honest. But Brandon, what do you like about this play? And how do you see how this can work at Kentucky? Like, can they do some guard screening with him, with McBride?
Yeah, I think you could see some of those inverted ball screens where you have a guard slipping out of there, setting the ball screen for a forward in McBride. But I think probably what this makes me think about even more so as it pertains directly to Kentucky, not so much the inverted ball screen, but a similar kind of guard and forward coming together screening action is if you get into some of the Zoom stuff and you're going down to the wing and say it's McBride on the wing going to set the down screen for Wilkins in the corner. Well, we know that like one of the reads you can make, like what if Alex Wilkins back cuts that? And now all of a sudden it's McBride coming back up off the handoff. Or you have, Wilkins coming off and McBride stepping back to get a catch as Wilkins curls it, or different things like that. So I think that, this specifically, like I don't know. I mean, we, at least in the 2 years so far, maybe because you haven't had the skill set to do it. Like we haven't seen very many, if any, hardly inverted ball screens from Coach Pope so far. Maybe he wants to do that with somebody like McBride in the fold. But it does certainly make me think of some of those other ways that you can involve guards and forwards together. And I think his skill set certainly translates to some of those things that you could see in some Zoom action and some of the other things that Kentucky runs on the perimeter. Just having a forward that can dribble, pass, and shoot a little bit and make some reads off of the dribble, like a couple of our clips have shown. I think those things can be accentuated and really brought to fruition within what certainly what we saw from Coach Pope's offense in year 1, and maybe now he feels like he has some more toys to play with here in year 3.
Yeah, and I kind of touched on it earlier, but the playmaking, like just the passing and assist numbers are just kind of strange with him because he looks to be a better playmaker than some of the numbers indicate. Like, he had more turnovers and assists last season, but if you look at his assist rate, where is it? Why do I not? Yeah, his assist percentage was 11.7%. So that was 70th percentile among all forwards. Really good number. And then his turnover percentage was 12.3%, which is a little bit higher than the assist percent, but that's still like in terms of forwards, that was like a good, like that's not a bad percentage at all. So, and I think you just probably should naturally see some of those numbers shift more favorably for him when he's not asked to be the guy. Because there was a couple of plays in the Arkansas game where he was passing to guys that just stopped finishing their routes, like guys that were supposed to be cutting and just stopped for whatever reason. And like he was telling them like, hey, like keep going. Like I was leading you. I had like there was two different passes where he got credit with a turnover because his guys just didn't finish their runs against Arkansas. So, and like you said, like I mean, he could be the guy kind of operating the zoom action from the top too, like where guys are coming around because I feel like he's a good enough passer that he can make some of those slip passes, the backdoor cuts, things like that. So we'll see. That the inverted pick and roll stuff was interesting though, Brandon. I think that might be something we'll try. I should have asked Mark Pope that in the comment section of his Twitter account yesterday when he was asking for
everybody. Remember, you can go ask Coach Pope a question right now too, and he will answer them over the next few days.
Yeah, and hopefully he does give like some good detailed response. I wonder if he's gonna tweet those back or is he gonna do like video? I hope he does.
I kept my mouth shut for a second there, but I do. We're doing pretty good on time. I might as well bring it up. Like,
go for it.
He said he was going to get to them in the next couple of days. And I don't mean, again, like we're not going to go doom and gloom and make everything a big deal because it doesn't have to be. But like it's been almost like 24 hours now. Like you didn't have, like, we couldn't answer one already. Like I feel like
they're going to do some big video.
Like when you put out that video, like I at least need one or two answers like pretty quickly. Like I'm not saying it needed to be like immediate or even last night, but like, we couldn't have had one at 9 o'clock this morning and one at like noon. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to nitpick every single thing that happens because I feel like right now within Big Blue Nation, it is almost like no matter what you do. And I mean, heck, I'm as positive as probably anybody about most things. And I even fall into the trap of like, I feel like I'm just supposed to be mad about like anything that happens, even if it's a good thing or just kind of not a thing. And in my opinion, this is a kind of is not a thing. Like, okay, like we wish he would come on KSR. We wish he would do this interview or whatever. But like, all right, the dude put out a tweet. Like, fine, who cares? Like, it's just not that big of a deal, in my opinion. But I am interested to see when we get our first response and how many responses we do get. Now, part of the problem is like 98% of the comments are unusable because they're either like vulgar
trolls,
trolls, things you can't read on the internet, or so like there's not that many constructive questions, unfortunately.
There were some good ones. Like I will say there was like 2,500 comments under that post as of this morning. I'm sure it's up to 3,000, 4,000 replies. So he'll have plenty of once you sift through all the nonsense.
How this ends up going, and I'm interested to see how much longer we have to wait before we get
what I hope he does is they take I set the over under in our group chat at 4.5 questions answered. How many do you think that's over or under?
Under.
I feel like that's a good line. Under, you think?
Yeah.
See, what I want him to do is just sit down in front of a camera, someone feeds him the questions, and you make a 10-minute video with 5 questions, spend 2 minutes each answering these questions, pick some of the more detailed ones where you actually have to go in and think about it. Like, I know what his GM answer is going to be. You don't have to answer that one. I don't care about that because obviously you need a GM and whatever you're going to say, unless you come out and say, yes, we're getting a GM. Like, I don't care what that answer is. Like, talk about the basketball stuff. What do you like about Zoom and Alex and all that? Like, so I do hope he does that. And I hope it's just a 10-minute video of him sitting there answering questions because I do think that would be entertaining and worth it. But I don't have a big takeaway on whether or not he should be doing media or anything. I don't really have a take on that at all because to be honest, I don't care. I think but at least for me, it would be nice for my job because it'd be easier to have more content to write about. But other than that, like there really isn't a reason for him to come out and just answer a bunch of questions. So that's interesting, like how he's doing it with Twitter. And I'm sure I'm sure we'll get those hopefully by like Thursday or Friday. And I hope it's just one big video and that's how he does it, but we'll see. Anyways, I forget exactly what we were talking about before we went on that little rant.
I think we were pretty much ready to roll into your last clip.
Roll into the next one here. Well, let's just go ahead and do that then, because I forget entirely what we were talking about. So this will be our last one. This is kind of a 2-for-1-ish deal here. You're going to get like a slight contest on defense. And then what I like is his mismatch hunting. And this was something that he talked about. And again, there's an article on KSR Plus. You might have to go back a week, but Jacob Polachek talked to Justin himself, and he was talking about how he thought he was really good at taking advantage of mismatches last season of James Madison, and you're going to get a little bit of a taste of that here. So he's got Billy Richmond, knows he doesn't have to go up on him too tight, does a good job of getting a contest, and then as he's running down the floor here, he pretty quickly notices that he has a mismatch, like has his hand up in the air immediately, like knows he's got Billy Richmond on him, knows that he can kind of body him a little bit. They get the ball down to the corner, then he switches, Carter Knox is on him. That's still a mismatch for him, so he's asking for it there. It's not the most aggressive post up or anything here, I will admit, but he does enough to get himself in a good position where he is able to just put up an easy layup over a guy that's smaller than him. And again, these are against two SEC level wings in Carter Knox and Billy Richmond. So I can see him taking advantage of mismatches like that going forward, getting himself some easy looks at the rim like that, because he is a big body and he does seem to have good hands. That can get himself, make these catches, make these type of catches, good instincts to notice that he can get down here and get himself in a mismatch opportunity. So that's why I like this play. Just a light contest on defense, know your personnel type thing on letting Billy Richmond fire that one up, and then doing a good job of identifying the mismatch pretty quickly on the way back down. So Brandon, any big takeaways on this play before we kind of start to wind things down here?
I think it's all about the versatility that he has in the front court. We've focused in these first few clips on him playmaking off of the dribble a little bit and showcasing what he can do as a secondary ball handler and going to make some plays for himself off the dribble using his strength around the basket. We've shown what his skill level from 3-point range. Now you're showing some of the benefit of him being a huskier guy. Now, some of the negatives surrounding him coming in is that there's been some talk of him not always being in the best shape, quite frankly, and maybe even some motor issues from time to time, which, a lot of times just kind of go hand in hand. Maybe if he's not working super hard in the offseason or whatever, then he comes in a little overweight. But whether he's overweight, a little pudgy, if you want to call him strong and physical, whatever it is, like at the end of the day, he's 230, 240 pounds, and that gives him a size advantage over some other foremen, even though he's not the tallest forward in the world by any means. He does have just some kind of physical girth and strength to him. And you saw it even in some of the earlier clips that Zach and I showed of him off the dribble. Like, guys kind of bounce off of him a little bit. And he has, a little bit of that bully ball, like almost sort of like old man YMCA game where he can play with some pace and get guys to bounce off of him. And he uses his size and strength pretty well in that way. So yeah, I think that's what you see here is him recognizing a mismatch, being able to use his body around the basket, having a soft touch to finish it. And I think that's something that hopefully you'll be able to find some of these mismatches, both on the perimeter where he can bully some guys off of the dribble, he can shoot over some guys from 3-point range, but then also around the basket. Again, thinking back to zoom action and the different cuts that become available for him to maybe get somebody switched on to him because they're worried about a shooter. They switch, so now he can back cut it and get a smaller guard on him, and kind of go roll him down into the paint and post him up, or he can back cut from the wing and go post somebody up around the basket, or just different cuts or curl something down there to go score. And I think those are all ways that he would be able to potentially score for Kentucky. And some of those ways they just weren't available to him as much at James Madison because he had to have the ball in his hands or he had to create it. And I think that now in a situation where he's been playing with, again, two of the elite playmakers that were available in the transfer portal market this offseason, I think it's going to open up some maybe some new strengths, quite frankly, for Justin McBride. Like, I'm going to be really interested to see the synergy numbers this coming season on like his points per possession via cuts. Like, I think he could be a really good cutter if he buys into doing that. Like, a lot of times really good shooters can become really good cutters because they garner so much attention on the perimeter. So I think some things like that, again, ways that he quite frankly just hasn't even been able to score in years past because of the role that he's played, I think could potentially be unlocked at Kentucky now here for his fourth and final year of college basketball.
Yeah, I definitely think he's going to have some good gravity when he comes to Kentucky. And one of the things we've talked about is just where's the spacing on the floor. I think he's a very good guy that can just help open things up a little bit. I think he can play the three a little bit if he needs to. It'd be interesting, could you do like a Cam Williams, Justin McBride 3-4 combo? Like that could be fun, where you've got two guys that want to shoot the ball, that can get to the rim a little bit. Can help space the floor and kind of have varying skill sets at the same time as well of what they can bring to the table. So, I think the offense is definitely what you're looking for with McBride. We can talk about the defense for a second. There's, the defense is hard to kind of gauge just because of, again, high usage role at James Madison, probably exerted most of his energy on that end of the floor. His defensive advanced stats numbers aren't great. But like we said off top, like James Madison was just a bad defensive team in general. So I don't know how much of that is on him. And when you look at some of his advanced stats on defense, going back to Oklahoma State and Nevada, they're actually above average. So, maybe that's just a competition level thing, or, who he's playing with. So I will say there was I think his block and steal numbers. Yeah, his block percentage is okay. The steal percentage is not good. I will say there was one drive where Billy Richmond was in transition. And he was trying to go right at Justin McBride. And McBride did a really good job of backpedaling, staying in front of him, like keeping his hands up, not baiting on any sort of, potential shot attempt or anything. I will say Billy Richmond swung the ball to the corner and the three went in, but that's not Justin McBride's fault. I thought he did a good job of at least being able to show that. He had a nice block at the end of this Arkansas game as well. I want to say on Brazil, who's a big athlete. So defensively, I don't know if there's anything you really want to talk about with him, Brandon. I think a lot of it is just going to be, let's say he's in a lineup with Cam Williams and Malachi Moreno, at least from the front court perspective, or at least a non-guard perspective, like those two, Malachi and Cam, will probably do the bulk of the, Cam will be on the wing trying to defend whoever the best wing player is, the best three, and he'll try and stop him. And then you can funnel everybody to Malachi, and he can kind of be your rim protector, so to speak. So I don't know if you have any massive takes on Justin McBride's defense, but I don't think everything we've talked about implies that Pope brought him here to be a stretch four to shoot the ball. What do you think, if anything, he'll be able to kind of provide on the defensive end for Kentucky?
Honestly, I'm going to go back to the easy answer that I've had a couple of times this offseason and say I really don't care, Zach. I want Kentucky to be really good offensively. I've said it before. I'll say it again right now for any new audience members. I think the reason why you hire Mark Pope as your head men's basketball coach is for his offensive mind, is so that you can turn out top 10 offenses year after year. We did that in year one. We were 40th in year two. Again, nobody's going to preface injuries more than you and I. It was a big part of last year. But 40th isn't good. That there were injuries in the first year, and we were still 10th in offensive efficiency. So, to me, that's what I want out of Coach Pope teams. I want him to, whether he's the coach at Kentucky for 3 years or 13 years or 23 years, I want a crap ton of those years to be top 10 offenses. And then the years where the defense is good enough are the years that we're going to compete at the very top. And then, there'll be years where it's not good enough, but quite frankly, as we're trying to kind of really get this thing going still, like I want to lean in on being great at what you're good at. And to me, that's being one of the best offensive minds in college basketball. I want the staff to spend time on how to make really good offensive players great offensive players, or how to make great offensive players even better offensive players. And you can kind of figure out some of the defensive things from there. Do I think he's a very good defender? No. Do I think that he's lazy at times on that end of the floor? Yes. Does he, get caught kind of standing up and watching things a little bit? Yeah, he does. But again, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying that we're just throwing caution to the wind and like, hey, we're not even worried about what's going on that end of the floor. But honestly, as I evaluate guys this offseason, it's like the 40th thing that I'm worried about is how well they can guard. I want to get back to being an elite offensive team and kind of figure it out from there. And especially, quite frankly, I think that Malachi Moreno has the upside as a rim protector to like rely on
Yeah.
him a little bit and say, hey, like, no, we're not going to be great defensively in terms of like sitting down and guarding one-on-one. It's not going to be Houston where you just can't get a paint touch. It's not going to be Iowa State where you're just causing chaos and turning people over all the time. But like, can you just kind of be serviceable, stay between your guy and the basket a little bit, contest threes, and then try to be tough to finish on around the rim? And I think that, with Malachi, well, hopefully with Malachi standing down there, we can be, maybe a step better even than we were last year on that front.
Yeah, and we mentioned it, maybe a little bit out of shape, a little in ways. Big offensive load last season, so you could see where maybe the defensive effort could kind of wane a little bit. He's also playing it in the Sun Belt, like I can understand it. That probably cancels out though. Going, the energy that he'll gain coming to Kentucky while having a smaller role will probably be offset by the fact that he's just playing better guys. So it's just going to be tougher to play defense. But yeah, like you said, I think if he's your starting four and you've got Cam next to him and Malachi next to him, like you're just kind of hoping that those two can help mask some of the defensive issues, or that Zoom and Alex can be quick enough and lanky enough to like get over to guys and help that way. So I've been looking through the comments here trying to see if there was any McBride specific questions. I didn't see any, but if anyone has, or Stephen, if you saw one, or if you have one, Stephen, if you have one, feel free to pop in. But well, if anyone's got one, please drop one in here before we get out. I did see someone kind of say like a PJ Washington type for Justin McBride. I can see like some of the skills there. Like obviously PJ Washington was I don't know if he's a lottery pick or not, but he was a top 20 draft pick. So, and has had a pretty good NBA career. So different players, obviously, but you can kind of see at least the same offensive skill set is there a little bit, like the way they handle the ball as 6'7", 6'8" big. So Steven, you got something for me?
Yeah, well, I would say PJ Washington ended up being Kentucky's highest percentage three-point shooter in 2019. Do you think Justin McBride, you all said he shot 30, he made 30-something threes last year?
38.
Can he get that number to the 60s? Is that possible? Or am I being way too optimistic about what Justin McBride is capable of doing?
Maybe 50. I think 50 would be probably a more reasonable goal. If he can hit close to 2 a game, I think that's you're really rolling with a guy like him. But what, Brandon, you got any big thoughts on that?
Yeah,
I think that's the goal. I think that would be the goal.
I would say 60 is probably a little ambitious to figure that somebody that was so high usage and made 38 last year would all of a sudden go all the way to 60. I think it's probably somewhat unrealistic. Quite frankly, I'll be happy if he makes 38 again. I don't think there's anything wrong with him making 35 to 43s at Kentucky this coming season. I think there'll be enough other, I hate to do it because it was kind of the trap I fell into last year of saying like, hey, I don't think there's going to be an elite shooter on this team. There's not going to be a Jackson Robinson or Kobe Brea. Cullen Chandler ended up getting pretty darn close to being one of those guys. Maybe fell just a tad bit short of those metrics. But I thought there was going to be more guys that could at least make a three. That ended up not really turning out. But like I do look at this roster now, and I look at Zoom Diallo, I look at Alex Wilkins, I look at Cam Williams, probably I guess I look at Braden Hawthorne even. I look at Justin McBride, I look at Usman Njaye, and that's 6 or 7 guys that I just mentioned that like they're all serviceable 3-point shooters. Are any of them going to come in and be the 73s at 40% guy? No, probably not. But I do think that all of those guys, but I always talk about making 1 3 a game at 33.3% or better. I think it's possible that all 6 of those guys do that. And I think that if even if you get 5 of the 6 or something to do that, then I think you get to a position where shooting won't be necessarily a concern for this Kentucky team.
Yeah, and you get there. You want to make probably around 10 threes a game plus, and if you'll get there pretty quickly doing what you just said there with those 5 or 6 guys. So, Sean Smith just got announced as the head coach of Frederick Douglass. Shout out to him. Good for him. He deserves that. Brandon, I do have to say that Captain Crash is really on your ass right now about this TCU over Texas pick that you I guess suggested to him for the NCAA tournament.
I guess, man, I had Texas in the Sweet 16, so I'm a little confused about what he's talking about, because I would think if you wanted to have Texas, I would think I would have been the beacon of hope, because I actually picked them to the Sweet 16, which happened. So yeah, I admittedly, Captain Crash, I'm a little confused as to what you're talking about, but I say so many
about
crazy
a different
things,
Brandon Ramsey.
I'm sure it's true.
Yeah, you probably flip back and forth every day.
Yeah, there's probably probably on another show I picked TCU just so I could be right no matter what.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, play both sides. That way you always win. All right. I don't see like any big comments on McBride or anything. Terry Moore's just saying, I think it says a lot about the breakdown that he's just solid and really leaves no questions. Like, I mean, I think he is just kind of a solid offensive player, and that's what you want from him. So I think if we're looking at the 3-pointers made, he averaged 27 minutes a game last season as well. I don't think that's going to Captain Crash says he's confused now. So he must be thinking of a different Brandon Ramsey, I guess. But yeah, so he'll probably, I mean, I don't think he'll average 27 minutes a game next season. That'll probably be closer to the low 20s or something like that, maybe even mid 20s. So there might be fewer opportunities to just get off threes, but I think he's going to be, I think his shot died. Like the shot chart we showed earlier that had a lot of those mid ranges mixed in there. I think you're just going to see a lot of that extend out to the three and just more threes and maybe even more corner threes for him and shots at the rim. So, Brandon, we'll just go ahead and start ending things here. Any any takes about Justin McBride? Or, well, let me say this before we do end. We're going to do another Zoom action. The plan, at least right now, is to do one more Zoom action on Friday at some point. It'll probably be pre-recorded, and we'll release it. Goodness, I'm stumbling over my words. We'll release it later on Friday, but we're going to do that on Jerome Morton, the GRC Winchester product, who went to Morehead State and then Washington State last year. He's going to come in and be one of the backups at the guard position for Kentucky. So we'll do that sometime on Friday, but that's looking ahead. So Brandon, any closing final thoughts here on Justin McBride, or just anything you want to talk about with regards to Kentucky? We already did our little Mark Pope hit, so not that one, but anything else?
Last thing I'm going to say, I've ended, I think, the majority of our podcasts in the same vein, so I want to do it again here. I have been as negative probably as Brandon Ramsey gets this offseason in terms of a lot of different things. However, I also generally offset it by saying I do think that Kentucky has made incremental improvements at most of the positions. Like I now think when you talk about the starting positions of Zoom Diallo at point guard, at Alex Wilkins, without Alex Wilkins at shooting guard. Admittedly, we're going to skip over small forward for now, and we're going to go to Justin McBride at the 4 and sophomore Malachi at the 5. I think that those 4 spots are improvements from the starters we had at last year's spots. I also am on the record as saying that I think that Zoom Diallo and Alex Wilkins, they're at least more skilled and more top-end talented than Otega Oweh. Do I think they're going to be better than Otega Oweh next season? That's really, really hard to predict today.
Scoring 20 points a game every game is tough.
Yeah, I mean, the dude just became a 20-point machine, and I'm not going to expect either one of them to do that. Now, they also could not do that and still have a better impact on the game because of the way they pass the ball, maybe the way they shoot it, whatever it may be. But as we sit here today, I think that you've made improvements at 4 of the 5 spots. That is not a bad spot to be in. The unfortunate part, and part of the reason why I still then kind of get negative, is because, like, well, you know, gosh darn it, we made the round of 32 last year. We played on Wednesday of the SEC tournament. Like, we needed to get a lot better, not just a little bit better. And in my opinion, the most you can argue is that we got a little bit better. And I don't think that a little bit better is going to be enough for us to truly get excited about it as Big Blue Nation. But, you know, I'll take improvement over the opposite. And also, it's May 6th. I am always Mr. Patience, even when I don't display it on a day-to-day basis. Always, you know, the roster need not be championship level on May 6th. We are not going to play a meaningful basketball game for another like 6 months. So, like, you know, this does not need to be figured out today or tomorrow. Now, the scary part is I don't know who was out there that I would get excited about that would change my feel. I mean,
They're in the draft
I feel
pool
like we
right
just
now.
we put all of our eggs in the Milan Momcilovic basket when like nobody's even
probably staying in
really
the
set.
draft.
I mean, I guess there's like maybe been reports that like he would have interest, but like, I mean, so does like everybody in theory, and then they seem to meet with us and it goes poorly. But so like outside of him, and there's a heck of a lot of steps that would have to happen, before that would even become a pipe dream. I don't know who could change my tune out there on this roster. Like, yeah, I still want to add a backup 5-man. That'll, move the needle like this much.
Yeah.
There probably is still room for another shooter or a backup guard. That'll change it this much. But like until you get that one top end talent, I don't think that any of us are going to change our tune about the upcoming season a whole lot. And quite frankly, I don't know who that's going to be at this point. And probably the bigger issue is even if that person does somehow become available, can we actually land them? Because that has been a problem, admittedly, over a couple years now. So those are my closing thoughts.
I think the thinking on that last part would just be that Kentucky has a Tyron Stokes amount of money set aside right now, where you are probably going to be, if not the highest bidder, the second, or you can easily get yourself to be the highest bidder for someone like Milan, where if money is just kind of one of the driving factors, it's going to be tough for another team to outbid Kentucky for a guy like Milan, or even an Alan Graves or Tunde Yesufu or whoever other guy pops up, international guys, whatever pops up. So at least from that, but I agree. And, this is just kind of a general view of our show. Like we're not going to evaluate this team on the expectation that they need to win a championship every year, because that's it won't do the show right. Like we need to evaluate what the talent is, what the what they are on this team, what value they provide on the team. So I feel like we do a good job of that without being like, well, Justin McBride is not he's not going to be an all SEC guy, so Kentucky's going to suck next year. Like, because I don't think most of our viewers think that, but I just kind of wanted to point that out, that, we try and evaluate on the talent that's actually coming in and how it can actually translate, and not kind of look at it on the major historical scope of the fact that Kentucky has to win the championship every year. So,
exactly.
But anyways, I will say, let's just talk for a couple more minutes here and then we'll get out of here. But Terry Moore asked about Malachi, just staying in the draft, possibility of that. Obviously, that would be a disaster if he stayed in the draft. Like, I mean, it would just be an absolute disaster. I think the chances of that happening are very small, like less than like a 2% chance of him staying, but that's as of right now. There's reports coming out he's going to meet with the Knicks. He'll probably meet with a dozen other teams, because that is literally the entire point of the whole draft process, pre-draft process, is to go and talk to these teams and they tell him what he needs to get better at. Depending, the draft pool is already kind of small because a lot of the good players are coming back. There's maybe a chance that he could just slide up out of just the process of other guys pulling out of the draft. So he could maybe slide up from there. But Malachi is going to make a lot more money at UK next season than he would unless he's like going number 20 in the draft, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but if he's a second round pick and he knows he's a second round pick, it would be silly to go to the NBA right now, because he can come back, make a lot more money, improve his stock next season and kind of jump up from there. But so just for me personally, as of right now, I put a 98% chance that Malachi comes back to Kentucky, and that 2% is just on the off chance that one team like absolutely falls in love with him and says, we're going to take a chance on you with number 22 in the draft or whatever it is. So, but yes, it would be a absolute disaster if he did stay in, because then you are, for lack of better words, you're just kind of screwed at the center spot. So, and I don't really know. I'm sure there's a backup plan for that Pope has, some sort of contingency plan, but boy, I don't want to see what that plan looks like, because I can't imagine that it's anything better than Malachi. So just any closing thoughts on that, Brandon, and the whole Malachi situation? He has until May 27th to pull his name out of the draft. That's the deadline. So we're at what? That's exactly 2 weeks from today, or 3 weeks from today. Or no?
Yes, 3 weeks.
Yes, 3 weeks. So got some time to wait on that, but any thoughts on that?
So my take is this, and I said that I think I was on Alan Cutler's show earlier this week where I said it like this. I think when Malachi entered his name into the NBA draft, it was solely 100% a fact-finding mission. He was
Yes.
going without
Yes.
even any, like, the thought was not really, I mean, he's 19 years old. Like, I'm sure the thought of playing in the NBA is on his mind somewhere. But like, realistically, I don't think he was even considering, like, oh, like, I wonder if I'll get feedback that'll say that I should stay in the draft. No, he was going to get feedback on, how do I become a first round pick next year? How do I potentially become a lottery pick next year or the year after? It was completely fact finding, data gathering. What do I need to do as a sophomore to then put myself in a position to get drafted where I want to get drafted? Now, as he moves himself up some draft boards, probably more than anything else, just through a battle of attrition, because a lot of people, including guys that are late lottery, mid first round picks, are pulling out of the draft outside of the elite, like top 10 freshmen. There aren't a lot of young guys, kind of those projectable projects of guys you can get excited about because they're 19. There's not a whole lot of those guys left in the draft. So he is, I think, moving up now into a situation where, like, there's probably been a dinner time conversation at the Moreno household of like, all right, you know what? What about
happens?
if you're like, yeah, like, if you are the 31st pick, what would we do then? Because, like, we kind of thought you were the 45th pick, so we weren't really even thinking about this, but like, what does happen if this so like, I think now, 2 weeks ago there wasn't even a conversation to be had. I think that now maybe there is at least like a meeting of the minds of like, okay, let's put a plan together as to like what it would take for me to stay in the draft. Or, what would I say if somebody said, hey, we're going to take you with the first pick in the second round and we're going to give you a guaranteed contract? Like, what,
That's the
like,
main
well,
thing.
yeah, like, well,
Guaranteed
let's
contract.
figure out the answer to some of these questions. Whereas a couple weeks ago, I don't think those were even, they weren't even worried about the answers to those questions because the questions weren't being asked yet. So I think that's really the only shift. I'm like you, barring something crazy, which I just can't imagine happening, quite frankly.
I don't want to imagine it. Yeah.
I still don't think it's anything to really be worried about. I think that you said less than 2%. Sure, I'll just go with you on that because I just don't think he's going to stay in the draft. I don't think that it's going to. I don't think it's going to be smart for him to stay in the draft, and I don't think that he's going to stay in the draft. But I do think that maybe it's at least a conversation now, whereas it wasn't even all that recently ago.
And honestly, I think that should excite Kentucky fans that he's continuing to kind of rise up the boards here. Like, I know a lot of fans don't like him and they think he's weak and soft and all these things, but like a lot of NBA teams really like this guy. NBA scouts are very fascinated to see how this guy can continue to progress and get better. Like you said, he was only like what he did last year as a freshman at Kentucky. Like, I think there was like a one and done kind of mindset with a guy like him where it's like, if he wasn't as impactful as like a Bam Adebayo or, some of the other bigs that have come through Kentucky over the last 15 years that were just like immediate impact all SEC guys. Like, he was still all SEC freshman, still put up big numbers, like hit a game winner for God's sakes. Like, I think there's a lot of reason to like him. And I don't know. There's a very small chance, I think, that he ends up staying in it.
The other thing I would say about, and it's just so funny how quickly perception and kind of, the way that you view something can change. Like, I'll be honest, and maybe I was the one that was wrong. Maybe I was the one that was crazy. I didn't think he was going to hardly play in the games last year. Like, I thought it was going to be, he's going to play some minutes until Jaden Quainitz is ready. And then it's going to be Jaden Quainitz and Brandon Garrison, and Malachi Moreno is going to be the kind of the guy on the outside.
Malachi was starting by game 5.
Yeah. And then, like, even before games started happening, like, all of us were very quickly, and with some of my ties to Indiana Elite, like, I was being told immediately, like, yeah, he's going to play because he's good and he's playing well. I'm like, okay, that's great. Like, I hope you're all right, but still, what's going to happen when Jaden Quainitz comes back? And, fortunately, or I guess unfortunately for Kentucky, we honestly never really even had to experience that. We never were in a position where all of them were healthy at the same time outside of 3 or 4 games. So, to to go from a guy that I honestly thought would play a almost meaningless role to
Third
being
string if all things went right with
right.
JQ.
Yeah, I thought he would be mostly irrelevant to how good Kentucky was last year. To now on May 6th, we're like talking ourselves into being worried that he's going to be in the NBA. Like, I mean, to me, what that does show is the dude got better, because I trust myself as an evaluator.
We've watched him
I
since he was a
watching-
junior in high school. He's
Yeah, like,
progressively gotten better every single year that we've been watching him play.
Exactly. Like when I watched that guy in high school as recently as the Indiana-Kentucky All-Star game, which I'm intricately involved in, like he was not that good in that game. Like our little 6'6", 6'7" Indiana dudes were making it hard on him in the Indiana-Kentucky All-Star game while, well, I'll be careful. I was going to say we boat raced you guys by 50, but I don't want to make Kentucky fans mad. My Hoosier flag started flying there for a second. But like he wasn't like I watched that game. I'm like, man, he's going to have a hard time when he gets to Kentucky. And then literally that's almost like a calendar year ago from today. And now here we are. It's like, like, is he going to be a first round pick? So like, gosh, Zach, think about if he has any sort of that much improvement again. Then we are talking about a lottery pick, Nick. Like if he improves at the rate that he did from senior year to freshman year, and he does that from freshman year to sophomore year, we were talking about a lottery pick next season. And that's why I think that we should be excited about him coming back, and also why we need him to come back.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. That was good stuff. So, yeah, I don't think we should have any worry about it, but I think everyone should be a lot more excited. And I'm sure a lot of people are excited about Malachi, but definitely like, I mean, the guy was battling with Florida's the best front court in the country and like got a double-double against him. Like I understand the finishing numbers were bad and some of that stuff, but man, if he does continue to improve, like the rate he's been progressing over the last 2.5 years has been pretty impressive. Because I saw this kid play when he was a junior in the state championship, and he looked like he could not, like he looked so unbelievably lost. To go from that 2 years ago to competing against SEC front courts and thriving and being an all SEC freshman guy in a year where there was a lot of really good freshmen, I think it's no small thing. So, but anyways, that's going to be it for today's episode of Zoom Action. Like I said, we'll try and reconvene again on Friday to break down Jerome Morton. If we don't get to it, then it will come eventually, but that's the plan right now. So yes, thanks everyone for watching. Again, make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Helps out the show, helps out our friend Stephen Peak behind the camera. We greatly appreciate that. So with that being said, this has been another episode of Zoom Action, and we'll talk to you all next time.